Welcome to the show. It's always great to have you with us. This week we focus on leadership and the youth in Africa. Our guest is Gibson Anduvate, a pastor and a writer. We get your views on the issues. And as always, we have Africa's Top 10. You're watching the Africa Leadership Dialogues. I'm Julie Gishuru. Our guest on the show this week is author and pastor Gibson Anduvate. His book, Leading Young, takes us through the journey of being a young leader with a focus on integrity, purpose, and competence as well. He's a pastor based in Nairobi at the International Christian Center. We're going to be focusing on youth in Africa and leadership as well. It's great to have you on the Africa Leadership Dialogues, Gibson. What a pleasure. We talk often about leadership and we talk about youth, yes, but we don't often talk about youth leadership.
Yes.
So perhaps we should start there. They say the youth bulge in Africa is both a blessing and possibly a curse. In places where we see conflict and division, it can be a very powerful force for either positive change, the youth population, or for crisis.
Yes.
So how do we build African youth into incredible leaders?
I think one is just the realization that this youth, this population of youth, is probably one of the greatest opportunities for the continent. And with that realization then comes the need to provide them with opportunity to be able to grow and to explore their talents. You know, when we look at leadership in Africa, I think we really blame the independence generation, the ones who took us into independence and were our initial leaders of the African continent. But I think that they only did as much as they could. They did the best that they possibly could have done. But we have a younger population that is more exposed, and I think we need to put tools in their hands. We need to give them opportunity to be able to make mistakes, to grow, equip them in school. I think our schooling system is a bit off because it's not so much driven in the manner of cultivating a thinker, a wholesome thinker. And that's, I think, something that should be really key. I think going to college is not about getting the degree, but it's also about growing as an individual and especially in your capacity to lead. Serious
issues around our education policies and our curriculums and a huge skills gap, which we've discussed so much here on Africa Leadership Dialogues. Thank you for raising that. I want to pull you back slightly to the comment that you've made on the Uhuru generation, doing their part, you have said. And then thereafter, we should, as African nations, have spent time building institutions, cooperating with us, growing regional cooperation, building the continent together as African nations, but we went into our separate silos and institutionally our countries just broke down instead of building up. How did we drop the ball?
I think the problem of that generation is more the understanding of what leadership is. And I think the understanding of leadership was more of being in charge, where it was all about me. So we have leaders who took over countries, and instead of really thinking about their people and just focusing all that they did on lifting up the levels of life of their people, it became more about the individual. So amassing wealth. And for a long time in Africa, I think that's our biggest struggle because our view and perception of leadership is wrong. We view leadership as a position of enlarging my own wealth, gaining more. Yet leadership should always be a trust, it's a stewardship. You are holding a trust on behalf of those that you are leading. And so until we have that understanding that it's okay for me to drive my small car and still go and have millions of dollars that I'm responsible over, as long as I'm ensuring that I'm fulfilling the mandate for which I'm in that place. So I think that's a core problem that we have. Our understanding of what leadership is totally off.
Considering we've come this far down for many countries, it's 50, 60 years now into independence, and we've recognized, you've written a book about this, and we have many other academics starting to think these things through. We are smart people on this continent, we're capable people, we see the problems. How do we reframe the thinking so that the new generation actually is able to herald the change and the new age that we need?
I think one, we have to get out of our tribal groupings. Because all across the continent, you find a lot of leaders who end up falling back into their tribes as their place of refuge and protection. But we have to look beyond seeing tribe. When I look at you, I don't see your tribe. I see an individual who has a lot to contribute to the society. And once we get out of that place where tribe is a key factor, then we are able to hold each other accountable. One, the elected leaders, we can hold them accountable to what we expect of them. And we need to have a society where, if you're corrupt, then the society holds you accountable for what you're doing. So there has to be a very intentional effort to refocus on what is our priority when you think about the whole aspect of the role of a leader. Who gets elected into a leadership position? Is it the person who can buy the votes? Is it the person who has the financial muscle? Is it the person who has a vision and the capacity to implement that vision? Because visionary leaders are good, but you also want leaders who can implement the vision, the discipline to be able to implement the vision. And that's one of the things that's lacking across the continent. So I think we need to look at institutions that are building capacity for youth, whether it's schools right from the early age, and look at how do we ensure that these institutions are preparing this generation to be able to take over the reins of leadership in this continent. And not only looking at leadership as me sitting in an office, but even at the level that I'm at, that I am a leader because I have influence on the people that are around me. We are in a place where all the young people want the blue-collar jobs. Yet, it's not really about the blue-collar job. It's about living a life of meaning and significance. So how do we teach our young people, tell them, if you are a farmer and you're producing crops and you're earning a living, you're contributing. If you are a teacher, you're making a great difference. And through the children that you have under your care, you are impacting the next generation. So I think we have to demystify what leadership is, relook at it, but also at a personal level. For me, I'm a big believer of it starts with me, that I have to be the change that I want to see.
Starts with each of us. Yeah. So we love to point fingers. It's human nature to blame, but you start being what you want to see in society, and that way we start to change one person at a time. Coming back to the education system, and it's improving across the continent, slowly but surely.
Yes.
Access to education is getting to more people. Slowly, quality is improving, so though some people might still have concerns about the quality of the education that's getting to many people across the continent. But in many ways, I've mentioned the skills gap that still is very apparent.
Yes.
Also, it's interesting to note, and this is perhaps a conundrum in the sense that I have engaged heavily with university graduates, and I have engaged with students who have had to drop out of high school or have never made it into university. And sometimes I get a keener sense of passion, dedication from those who haven't gone further in education. Is there something about the education that we adopted from our colonial masters that strips us of the need and the hunger and the passion to succeed?
I think that there's a challenge because we are brought up to believe that the only way to be able to make it in life, to succeed, is through education. And I think that robs us of something that's very valuable, that ability to be able to grow as a whole individual.
Person.
Yes, because you find people that are very gifted in sports, but because either there's no opportunity to grow in that area, they end up having to focus more on their studies. And if you interact with many college students, they will tell you that the process is simply for you to memorize and then repeat what you've memorized during the examinations. I was talking to a friend of mine, and he's doing his master's program, and he was saying he wishes that even his undergraduate program was at the same level as the master's program, because now he's in an institution where he's being challenged to think and to grow, to be practical, to implement. So I think that sometimes when you meet with young people who have been out in the world a bit more, the being street smart somehow seems to teach them something that they don't really get out of a college education. And that's why you wouldn't be surprised to find someone who dropped out of school running an organization where they actually are employing college graduates. Not to say that a college degree is not important, but it's just, I think, the emphasis that we have placed in it. I believe that every young person who needs to get a college degree. But don't just lock yourself in to just that college degree. I think you grow in a holistic manner. What else can you do while you're in school? What other programs can you be part of? I am a big fan of people that volunteer. I tell college students, why don't you find a place where you can go and volunteer of your skill? Grow apart from just gaining the knowledge, because the knowledge alone is not enough. You need to learn how to interact with people. You need to learn how to be a team player. And those are things that you cannot really be taught in a classroom.
Stay with the Africa Leadership Dialogues.
Coming back to the many young people who will not have an opportunity to get the college education.
Yes.
And you've mentioned sports. If you just think about all the poets and the artists out there, the musicians, and all the incredibly talented and creative people. What avenues must we create? Or how can they leverage their talent and grow?
I think it has to begin with you looking at where you are. Because a lot of times I talk to young people and they say, I don't have opportunity. But I tell them, you have to look at where you are and identify whatever opportunity that's around you, no matter how small. A challenge that I see often is that you have a lot of young people that want to earn from their talent or gifting. But they have to understand that it takes time for you to monetize or to earn from a gift. And I say, how can you grow that gift? As an individual, what's your area of passion? So you need to ask, what are some things that I can do, even if I will not initially get paid for, but they will allow me to grow in my gifting, and they will give me a platform where other people can also be able to see the area in which I'm gifted in. So I say, where you are, what can you start to do? I tell young people, there are always younger people behind you who can benefit a lot from your level of skill. Can you get together a group of young people, teach them? If you are a poet, if you are talented in sports, whatever it is, find someone else that you are teaching, that you're impacting. If you don't have opportunity, then create opportunity by helping others that are around you. And keep growing, because a lot of young people are not growing. They are on the internet for all the wrong things. Yet I tell people, YouTube is probably the biggest university that you will ever be able to attend.
Absolutely. Our champ, our javelin champion can attest to that, Julia Ciego.
Yes.
I think very interesting, and perhaps when you put yourself in a position where you realize you can also help others, that would give you the motivation and the self-belief to just try to do something. I want to slightly move the conversation to the current state of the world that we're living in. A young person in Africa today is faced by so many conflicting values, messages, belief systems. You've got your cultural practices versus modern practices. You've got your different religious ideologies in one space. In some places, that's not an issue because it remains, people live together comfortably. In other spaces, we have seen it become a very vicious, issue, the Boko Haram, the Al-Shabaab, and the kind of ideology they push. Then you're looking at all the information coming through digital platforms. How does a young person in an environment like this create a foundation of self-awareness, a value system, and live by that?
Yeah, it's challenging. It's challenging to be a young person. But with those challenges, I think also come great opportunities. And what I tell young people is it's important for you as a young person to have a vision, a personal vision of your life. I think as young as you are, you need to ask yourself, where I'm going, what do I want to become? What do I want to see? For me, when we grew up in a poor neighborhood in Eastlands. And at times we were not expected to become much. So in that place where you're not expected to become much, it's so easy for you to resign yourself and say, for sure, I will not amount to much. But I think just asking yourself, what do I want to become? Having a sense of a personal vision. And you might not have it all figured out, but at least having some idea of the kind of person, the kind of contribution that you'd like to make to society. And having that long-term view is very key. Because once you have that long-term view, then it begins to inform your short-term decisions. Maybe you want to be a teacher. You don't have the money to go to college, but you can go and volunteer in a school that's near where you are. Maybe you want to be an accountant, but you don't have the money to take all the courses. What can you do to begin learning where you are? I tell young people, one of the things that makes such a great difference is having a mentor. Looking around you and asking, who is it that when I look at them, I see myself. I look at them and I desire to be where they are. And if you can identify mentors and just say, can I meet with you once a month? Can I talk to you once every so often? And if you look at it critically, you'll find that every young person has access to at least one person. It might be a parent, might be a relative, it might be a neighbor. They have access to at least one person that is a picture of where they see themselves. And so if that mentor can then be someone that you will go to and allow them to speak into your life. I tell young people, read. You know, they say in Africa, if you want to write something from an African, put it in a book.
Terrible.
But that's not, it's not a good thing.
No.
And over time, for me, one of my prayers that would change. Because books give you opportunity to interact with people that you will never meet in person. You know, if you go into many of our libraries, you will find that the membership is so low because young people don't see the value. But books are the wealth that no one else can give you. So you need to ask, what can I do to grow? And I'm going to say this, that every young person, it's your responsibility to grow. It's not your parents' responsibility. It's not your teacher's responsibility. It's not your pastor's. It's your personal responsibility to grow. And if you will take it as that and really be intentional about your own growth as a person, then you will be able to make something out of yourself.
Powerful stuff. How do we move our young generation, our blessing and our opportunity?
Yes.
How do we move them from a position of loss as to what to do, where to go, how to move forward, from a position of frustration to a position of actually owning the problems that we have on the continent, solving the problems that we have on the continent, and becoming the role models? How do we reframe the new generation?
I think it has to begin with there are different aspects to this whole conversation. I think one, there has to be the goodwill from political leadership. And that means the setting up of institutions which are really geared towards improving the lives of young people. I think when we say that we are setting up systems to give young people access to funds, then let's cut out the bottleneck and ensure that these young people have access to the funds. I know some young people who, for a long time, they've been trying to get funding. And I have had to personally help them along that journey to try and ensure that they actually get funding. So we need to cut out the bottleneck.
This is from the funds that were created for the youth.
For these young people. So the government of the day, in whichever part of the continent, they need to place an emphasis on these young people. Set up structures, not to be politically correct, but set up structures because you really mean well for the young people. Let them know that they are of value, they're not a burden. I think we need to look at how can we create platforms in the arts. You know, if you look at, like in our country, the whole aspect of sports, it's one really not so good area right now because you have all these different organizations that really need to clean up their own act. So let's provide opportunities.
They need to be purposeful.
Yes. It's not about what they get. It's about the young people that are there to serve. So if we create systems where if I'm a footballer, that talent can be able to be grown up to a level where I can play professionally. If I run, I have a platform where I can grow in that. If I'm talented in music, I have a platform where I can grow that gifting. So I think we need to get the focus a bit off just the education pipeline and really help young people grow in their giftings, in their talents. Young people that show leadership ability at a young level, there needs to be the intentional effort to encourage them to grow in their leadership potential. And I think collectively, if the society looks at young people as reliable and trusted people, because most of the times I think we are so afraid that young people cannot make much of any situation. So we rob them of opportunities to grow.
Right. We bemoan our younger generation, which is a tragedy because I've found that young people are idealistic. They are dreamers. They think in a more Puritan way than the rest of us. And so we should be nurturing and hopeful about their potential. So we hope, we believe in you. And we want to build you to be better than us. Value systems. Value systems, such a difficult issue to grapple with.
Yes.
The examples set, maybe by those ahead of us, maybe by our generation, are not always the best. Living in a digital world now, there's access to so much more. We're seeing young students making unwise decisions that could impact the rest of their lives. In an environment, Africa is probably the continent in the world that most continues to embrace religion. Many other continents are are letting go of religion and Christianity, Islam, you know, they thrive in Africa. We are believers.
Yes.
Why do we not get the value system issues right, if that's the case?
I think that there's a gap. I think there's a gap between what we say we are and what we truly are. And that's something that I think as a society we have to take responsibility for. Because what sometimes is communicated on Sunday is not really lived out throughout the week. And we see that in different settings, you know. And I think that the church needs to bridge the gap between what they teach and its application in the real world. That these young people have issues and they're looking for pointers on how they can deal with these issues. You know, you'll find that in many settings, these young people are not seen as being of value. But if we are looking at the future, then that's where our greatest investment needs to grow. I think in the whole aspect also of what the society celebrates. Because when we celebrate that which is not right, what you're telling this young person is that tomorrow, if that's where you end up, we're going to celebrate you. So we're telling them that the means don't really matter. As long as you get to the end and you get what you want, that's okay. Which really is not it. It matters. It matters how you generate your wealth. It matters how you get where you are. And so we need to bring back those values and say that, one, it's important for you to be a person of integrity. It's important for you to be someone that is fair, that is just. It's important for you to value the life of another person. Because now we have young people who are getting into crime and they do not value life. As long as they're able to take what you have, it's okay. And it's not okay. It's not okay for you to have access to all the big things that you want, yet you have destroyed lives along the way. So as a society, we need to change what is it that we value, what is it that we celebrate, that these young people should look up to.
We've already come to the end, and I want you to look into the camera and deliver a personal message to young people on the continent and also perhaps to the older generations as to how to nurture these young people. Just keeping in mind this is a continent where we've seen incredible potential from young people, and yet young people are used and abused in the worst way possible. You know, when we look at the militia, when we look at organizations like Al-Shabaab, they use young people to further their agendas. You know, they sell ideologies to young people looking for hope. What message do you have for these young people as to how they can become a productive part of building a new Africa? And what message do you have to African leaders, African parents, as to how we make this happen, please?
I think as young leaders, you have to take responsibility for your life. And you have to decide what is it that you want to make out of yourself. And then ask yourself, what are some of the steps that you need to take in order to become that person? All around you, there are opportunities for you to grow. There are opportunities for you to make something out of yourself. And the choices that you make today will impact who you will be tomorrow. So you need to be careful that the choices that you make become building blocks to who you really want to become in the future. And that as you are faithful in little, you know, sometimes we want the big platform, but it comes out of you being faithful in the little things, in the small opportunities that you have around you. I think for the rest of the continent, for leaders and those of us that are a bit older, I think you and I have a responsibility to ensure that the young people that are around you have opportunity to be able to grow. So as you're rising, as you're growing, who is it that you're giving opportunity to be able to grow and to walk along with you? Are you taking a few young people on the journey? Are you creating opportunity for them to really become what God intended for them to be? As leaders, we have responsibility to give these young people access and opportunity. And that's what really is key, that we are giving them access and opportunity to be able to make something out of themselves. And the future is going to judge you and I harshly if we don't play our role in this generation on this continent.
Thank you so much, Gibson. I have to say, through the interview, Gibson has been holding on to a book. If you just hold that up so we can catch that on camera. It's an amazing book, Leading Young. And you need to read it whether you're young or old. It's an incredible guide on leadership and how to better use your potential, how to better direct your life. And this is how you can get hold of the book.
To get a copy of Gibson Anduvate's book, Leading Young, reach him on Twitter @Anduvate. Call or text 0713-175-804. You can also visit any Biblica or Berean bookstore near you.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
Stay with the Africa Leadership Dialogues.
My name is Gibson Anduvate, and you are watching Africa Leadership Dialogue.
Now let's get to your views on the issues.
This week we asked you, how will Africa benefit from supporting and mentoring young people for leadership positions? Joshua Nyakwar Omenda Kwanya says, by mentoring youth for leadership positions, Africa captures or brings in the energy that youth possess to help transform various economic sectors. This energy is what the current leaders lack.
Hi, my name is Funoro Shalin and I'm watching African Leadership Dialogues from Nairobi. On the issue about youth being given a chance to be leaders, I think it will be an appropriate idea, since we'll get fresh minds, we'll get creative minds, we'll get people who can be able to come up with ideas on how to develop a country, and they can also find ways of how to fight corruption in their respective countries. Since people who are in leadership who are old, they are used to the same ways of doing things and they cannot really embrace change. But with youth, we're really sure that they are going to embrace change. Thank you.
To join our conversation, go to our G+ page, Africa Leadership Dialogues, on Facebook, Africa Leadership Dialogues, on Twitter, @AfricaLD, and on WhatsApp, send your video comments to +254 715 816 033.
Time now for Africa's Top 10.
This week on Africa's Top 10, we feature the least corrupt countries in Africa. The Corruption Perception Index ranks countries and territories based on how corrupt the public sector is perceived to be. A country or territory's score indicates the perceived level of public sector corruption on a scale of 0, which is highly corrupt, to 100, which is very clean. This is according to the Transparency International 2014 report. Starting us off at number 10 is Swaziland. The South African country is ranked 69 globally with an index of 43. Coming in at number 9 is South Africa with a score of 44 and is positioned at number 67 globally. At number 8 is Ghana, positioned at number 61 globally with a score of 48. Slotted in at number 7 is Rwanda. The East African nation is ranked 57th globally with a score of 49. Positioned at number 6 is Namibia with a score of 49.5 and is ranked at number 56 globally. Taking the 5th spot is Lesotho, which is ranked 55th globally with a score of 49.9. At number 4 is Mauritius with a score of 54 and is ranked at position 47 globally. Coming in at number 3 is Seychelles. The island nation is ranked 43rd globally with a score of 55. Cape Verde comes in at number 2. The country attained a score of 57, taking position 42 globally. At number 1 this week is Botswana with a score of 63 and is ranked at number 31 globally. And that's Africa's Top 10 this week.
As always, we end the show with words of wisdom, and this week Pastor Gibson Anduvate will share his favorite quote with us. Over to you.
Yeah, Mother Teresa said that I may not be able to change the world, but I can throw a stone into the waters and create ripples.
Each one of us has a part to play. So how do you start to play your role? Blessings to you and blessings to Africa.